The Dragon Family. The neon-lit diner on asteroid X9 hummed with the usual symphony of alien conversations and clinking dishes. Theo, a 10-year-old human boy with messy brown hair and curious eyes, sat at the counter sipping synthesized cocoa. His grandfather had brought him here for his birthday, promising adventures beyond his wildest dreams. The diner door swooshed open, and Theo's jaw dropped. 3 dragons entered, real, living, breathing dragons. Their scales shimmered from emerald to sapphire under the harsh lights. The largest dragon, clearly the father, ducked to avoid hitting his horns on the doorframe. Behind him came the mother dragon, moving gracefully despite her size. Between them walked a smaller dragon, no bigger than a large dog, whose eyes darted curiously around the diner. Zara, the 4-armed Andromedan waitress, glided over on her hover skates. "Table for 3, she asked with her professional smile. "Yes please, somewhere with ample space if possible," the father dragon replied, a small puff of smoke escaping his nostrils. As they passed Theo's counter, the young dragon's eyes met his. For a moment, 2 young beings from different worlds shared a look of pure fascination. Theo watched the dragon family settle into a corner booth designed for larger patrons. He couldn't help but notice the worried glances the parents exchanged as they looked at the menu. The little dragon bounced excitedly, pointing at various items with his clawed finger, oblivious to his parents' concern. When Zara approached their table with her digital pad, the father dragon cleared his throat, a sound like gravel in a blender. "We'll have the asteroid nuggets and plasma fries for the little one," he said, glancing at his mate. "And just 2 glasses of Luna water for us, thank you." Even Theo's young ears could tell the dragon parents were skimping on their own meal. He remembered his grandfather's words from earlier: "Kindness, Theo, is the universal language. It transcends species, planets, and even time itself." Without hesitation, Theo hopped off his stool and approached Zara. "Excuse me," he said, tugging gently on one of her lower arms. "Can I pay for their meal?" "All of it, whatever they want." Zara's 4 eyebrows shot up. "That's mighty generous, little one. You sure about that? Dining isn't cheap these days with the shortage of dark matter and all." Theo nodded firmly, pulling out a handful of glowing credits, his birthday money from his parents back on Earth. "I'm sure. They should have a proper meal, all of them." Zara's face softened. "Well, aren't you just the sweetest thing this side of the Milky Way? All right then, let's make it happen." She glided back to the dragon family's table and spoke quietly. Theo watched as confusion, disbelief, and finally gratitude washed over their reptilian features. The mother dragon's eyes welled with tears while the father sat straighter, his chest swelling with emotion. The young dragon, however, had a different reaction. He scrambled out of the booth and bounded over to Theo, nearly knocking him over in his excitement. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," he chittered, his forked tongue flicking rapidly. "I'm Zix. What's your name? I've never met a human before. Is it true you can't breathe fire? How do you stay warm? Why is your skin so soft?" Theo laughed, steadying himself against the counter. "I'm Theo. No, we can't breathe fire, we use clothes and heaters to stay warm. As for the soft skin, I guess we're just made this way." As the 2 young beings chatted, the adult dragons approached. The father extended a massive clawed hand toward Theo. "Young man," he rumbled, "your kindness has touched us deeply. I am Drogon, and this is my mate, Lysandra. We've fallen on hard times recently. Our home planet, Draconius, has been ravaged by an unprecedented ice age. We're refugees seeking a new home, and every credit counts. Your generosity means more than you can know." Theo shook Drogon's hand, marveling at how his entire arm was engulfed by the dragon's grasp. "I'm happy to help," he said simply. "My grandpa says kindness is the most important thing in the universe." Lysandra knelt down, bringing herself to Theo's eye level. "Your grandfather is a wise man," she said, her voice melodious despite its deep timbre. We will not forget this, Theo of Earth. May the stars shine brightly on your path. As the dragon family returned to their table, now able to order a full meal without worry, Theo felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with his cocoa. He'd made a difference in someone else's life, and the entire universe suddenly felt a little brighter. Little did Theo know, his act of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would soon catapult him into an adventure beyond his wildest dreams. In a shadowy corner booth, a figure tapped an encrypted message into a wrist-mounted communicator. The message, bounced across multiple galaxies, read simply, "The boy is the key. Proceed with the plan." The Void Collective. 7 hours after leaving the diner, Theo lay peacefully in his bunk aboard his grandfather's ship, the Stellar Wanderer. The gentle hum of the engines and the soft glow of distant stars through his porthole had lulled him towards sleep when suddenly, an alarm blared through the vessel. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow as Theo's grandfather, Captain Orion Wells, burst into the room. "Theo, get up. We've got company, and they're not the friendly sort." Theo scrambled out of bed, his heart pounding. "What's happening, Grandpa?" Orion's weathered face was grim as he tossed Theo a spacesuit. "Alien invasion, kiddo. And for some reason, they seem mighty interested in us. Suit up quick, we might need to make a run for it." As Theo fumbled with the suit's clasps, a bone-jarring thud reverberated through the ship. Something had latched onto them. "Blast it all," Orion growled, helping Theo with the final seal on his helmet. "They've already got us in a tractor beam. Okay, new plan, we stand our ground. Remember what I taught you about the ship's defense systems?" Theo nodded, trying to quell the fear rising in his throat. "Aye, Captain," he managed, attempting a weak salute. Orion's face softened for a moment as he placed a hand on Theo's shoulder. "That's my brave boy. Now let's show these interstellar bullies what happens when they mess with the Wells family." As grandfather and grandson raced toward the bridge, neither could have imagined the true nature of the invasion force. The corridors echoed with their hurried footsteps, emergency klaxons wailing, punctuated by the occasional metallic groan of the ship's hull straining against the alien tractor beam. "Grandpa," Theo panted, his voice slightly muffled by his helmet, "who are they? What do they want with us?" Orion's face was a mask of concentration as he punched in the access code for the bridge. "Not sure, kiddo, but in my experience, uninvited guests rarely bring good news." The bridge door hissed open, revealing a panoramic view of space through reinforced plasteel windows. Theo's breath caught in his throat. A massive ship loomed before them, easily dwarfing the Stellar Wanderer. Its design was unlike anything Theo had ever seen. The alien vessel seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, its surface a shifting pattern of deep purples and blacks that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. Orion slid into the captain's chair, his fingers flying over the control panels. "Theo, man the defensive systems. Remember, yellow switches arm the particle shields, green activates the pulse cannons." Despite the gravity of the situation, Theo couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement as he clambered into the weapons officer's seat. How many times had he pretended to do this very thing? Now it was terrifyingly, exhilaratingly real. A crackle of static filled the bridge, followed by a voice that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly into their minds. "Inhabitants of the vessel designated Stellar Wanderer, we are the Void Collective. Resistance is unnecessary and will only result in your discomfort. We seek the one known as Theo. Surrender him, and you will be released unharmed." Theo's eyes widened in shock. "Him? Why would aliens be after him?" Orion's jaw clenched. "Like hell," he growled, then opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Orion Wells of the independent starship Stellar Wanderer. We don't take kindly to threats or demands. State your business, or prepare to be forcibly removed from my space." A chuckle resonated in their minds, a sound that sent shivers down Theo's spine. "Charming. Your species' bravado never ceases to amuse. Very well, we shall enlighten you. The boy you call Theo has inadvertently involved himself in matters far beyond his comprehension. His actions in the diner on asteroid X9 have set in motion events that threaten the very fabric of our plans. We require him to undo what has been done. Theo's mind raced. The diner? But all he'd done was buy a meal for that nice dragon family. How could that possibly matter to these aliens? Orion's eyes narrowed. I don't give a damn about your plans. Theo stays with me. End of discussion. The voice took on a colder tone. You misunderstand, Captain Wells. This is not a negotiation. We are taking the boy. The only variable is how much damage your vessel sustains in the process. As if to emphasize the point, a violent shudder ran through the stellar wanderer. Warning lights flashed across Theo's console as the shield strained against an invisible force. Theo, now. Orion barked. Theo's fingers danced across the controls, activating the pulse cannons. Brilliant lances of energy shot from the stellar wanderer, impacting the Void Collective's ship. For a moment, Theo's heart soared as he saw the alien vessel's dark surface ripple under the assault. But their triumph was short-lived. The Void Collective ship seemed to absorb the energy, its surface undulating like dark water. Then, with horrifying speed, tendrils of shadow extended from the vessel, wrapping around the stellar wanderer. Impossible, Orion muttered, his face pale. Theo, get to the escape pod. Now. But Grandpa. No buts. Go. I'll be right behind you. Theo hesitated for a split second, then sprinted for the escape pod bay. As he ran, the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, making each step a challenge. He could hear his grandfather's voice echoing through the corridors, alternating between colorful curses and status updates to the ship's computer. Just as Theo reached the escape pod, a deafening screech of tearing metal filled the air. The corridor behind him disappeared, replaced by a swirling vortex of purple-black energy. Theo dove into the pod, his fingers scrambling for the launch controls. Grandpa, he screamed into his suit's comm, where are you? Static was his only answer. The vortex grew, tendrils of dark energy creeping toward the escape pod. With a sob, Theo slammed his hand down on the launch button. The pod rocketed away from the stellar wanderer just as the vortex engulfed it. As Theo's pod tumbled through space, he pressed his face against the small window, watching in horror as the ship he'd called home was slowly absorbed into the Void Collective's vessel. Silent tears streamed down his face. I'm sorry, Grandpa, he whispered. I'm so sorry. The Void Collective ship turned, its attention now firmly fixed on Theo's tiny escape pod. As it grew larger in his viewport, Theo's mind raced. What had he done in that diner that could possibly be so important? And how was a 10-year-old boy from Earth going to escape an alien invasion force? As the tractor beam locked onto his pod, Theo closed his eyes and made a silent wish, for courage, for cleverness, and most of all, for the chance to see his grandfather again. Captured. The escape pod shuddered violently as it was drawn into the belly of the Void Collective ship. Theo gripped his seat restraints, watching through the small viewport as metallic walls slid past in the dim purple light. The pod came to rest with a soft thud in what appeared to be a docking bay. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, the pod's hatch opened automatically. Theo hesitated, then slowly removed his helmet and stepped out. The air was breathable but carried a strange, metallic taste. The docking bay stretched out before him, its walls covered in the same light-absorbing material as the ship's exterior. Strange symbols pulsed along the walls in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Welcome, young Theo of Earth. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking directly into his mind as before. A figure materialized from the shadows, tall, draped in flowing robes that seemed to be cut from the same darkness as the ship itself. Where a face should have been, there was only a shifting void. I am Nexus Prime of the Void Collective, the figure continued. You have caused us considerable inconvenience. Theo's voice shook, but he managed to stand straight. Where's my grandfather? What did you do with him? Captain Wells is preserved. His fate depends entirely on your cooperation. Nexus Prime gestured, and images appeared in the air, holographic displays showing the stellar wanderer suspended in some kind of energy field deep within the alien ship. Now, shall we discuss why you are so important to us? I don't understand, Theo said. I'm just a kid. I haven't done anything. Haven't you? Nexus Prime moved closer, and Theo could feel the cold radiating from the creature. Tell me about the diner, child. Tell me about the dragons. Theo's mind raced. I just bought them dinner. They looked hungry. Such a simple act, Nexus Prime mused. Yet it has unraveled months of careful planning. You see, young Theo, the dragon family you helped, they were not random refugees. Drogon and Lysandra are members of the Dragon Royal Guard, protectors of one of the most powerful artifacts in the galaxy, the Heart of Draconius. Images swirled around them, showing a beautiful crystal planet covered in ice, and at its center, a pulsing gem that seemed to contain the light of 1,000 suns. The heart maintains the balance between matter and void across 7 star systems, Nexus Prime continued. When their planet began to freeze, the dragons were forced to flee, taking the heart with them. We have been tracking them for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But what does that have to do with me? Theo asked, though he was beginning to understand. Your act of kindness forged what your species calls a life debt. In dragon culture, this creates an unbreakable bond. They are now honor-bound to protect you, which means they will never surrender the heart as long as you are in danger. Nexus Prime's void face somehow managed to convey displeasure. Quite inconvenient for our plans. Theo felt a spark of hope. So they won't give you what you want? Not willingly. But if you were to, convince them that surrender is their only option to save your life. Nexus Prime let the implication hang in the air. I won't do it, Theo said firmly, surprising himself with his own courage. I won't help you hurt innocent people. Nexus Prime was silent for a long moment. Then, with a gesture, the walls around them became transparent. Theo gasped as he saw they were moving through space at incredible speed, and ahead of them was a familiar sight, Asteroid X9 and its neon-lit diner. Perhaps you need motivation, Nexus Prime said coldly. Observe. Smaller Void Collective ships peeled away from the main vessel, heading straight for the asteroid. Theo watched in horror as they surrounded the small outpost. No, he cried. There are innocent people there. Indeed. And their safety depends on your cooperation. You have 1 hour to consider our offer, young Theo. Help us claim the heart of Draconius, or watch as everyone you showed kindness to suffers the consequences. Nexus Prime gestured again, and shadowy figures materialized around Theo, guards made of the same dark energy as their master. You will be taken to your quarters to contemplate your decision. Choose wisely. As Theo was led through the ship's twisting corridors, his mind whirled with desperate thoughts. How could a simple act of buying someone dinner have led to this? And more importantly, how could he possibly save his grandfather, the dragon family, and everyone on Asteroid X9? The guard stopped at a door that slid open to reveal a small, sparse room with a single bed and a viewport showing the stars rushing past. They pushed him inside, and the door sealed behind him with a sound like finality itself. Theo sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. He was trapped aboard an alien ship, his grandfather was captured, and an entire asteroid full of innocent beings was in danger, all because he tried to do the right thing. But as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Theo remembered his grandfather's words, kindness is the universal language. Maybe, just maybe, that same kindness that had gotten him into this mess could also get him out. He went to the viewport and stared out at the stars, his young mind working furiously. There had to be a way to save everyone. There just had to be. In the depths of space, unknown to the Void Collective, 3 shapes moved through the darkness, dragons flying faster than any ship, their scales providing perfect camouflage against the star field. The dragon family had received Theo's distress signal, and they were coming. The royal guard of Draconius had never failed to honor a life debt, and they weren't about to start now. The dragon rescue. Theo had been staring out the viewport for what felt like hours when something caught his eye, 3 streaks of light moving impossibly fast through space, weaving between the Void Collective's escort ships. His heart leaped as he recognized the graceful forms of dragons in flight. Drogon, Lysandra, and little Zix were coming for him. Suddenly, the ship shuddered as something impacted the hull. Alarms began blaring throughout the vessel, and Theo could hear the sound of running footsteps in the corridors outside his door. The dragons had arrived, and they weren't being subtle about it. A tremendous roar echoed through the ship's structure as Drogon's dragon fire met the hull plating. Theo pressed his face to the viewport and saw Lysandra using her claws to tear through an external sensor array while Zix, despite his small size, proved remarkably effective at confusing the ship's targeting systems by darting between the weapon emplacements. The door to Theo's cell suddenly began to glow red-hot. Within moments, it melted away completely, revealing Drogon's massive form crouched in the corridor, smoke rising from his nostrils. Theo! Zix bounded past his father, nearly bowling the boy over with enthusiasm. "We told you we'd never forget your kindness. How did you find me?" Theo asked, amazed. "Dragon honor runs deeper than space itself," Drogon rumbled, his voice filled with determination. "When we sensed you were in danger, nothing in the universe could have stopped us from coming to your aid." Lysandra appeared behind them, her elegant features set in grim resolve. "We must move quickly. The Void Collective's reinforcements will arrive soon, and we still need to rescue your grandfather." As they made their way through the ship's corridors, avoiding patrols of shadow guards, Theo explained everything Nexus Prime had told him about the heart of Draconius and the life debt. "The heart," Lysandra said softly as they paused at an intersection. "I should have known they would eventually come for it." "What is it exactly?" Theo asked. "The heart of Draconius is more than just an artifact," Drogon explained, his voice heavy with reverence. "It's the crystallized essence of our homeworld's core, a source of life energy that has maintained the balance of our star system for thousands of years. When the Ice Age began, we had to choose between letting our people freeze or saving the heart. We chose to save both by leaving our world behind." "But why is it so important to the Void Collective?" Theo pressed. "Because they are beings of pure entropy," Lysandra replied. "They consume light, life, and energy itself. The heart of Draconius contains enough life force to sustain them for millennia, long enough to spread their darkness across the galaxy." They reached the ship's central core, where Theo's grandfather was being held. The stellar wanderer hung suspended in a web of dark energy, and through its transparent aluminum hull, they could see Captain Orion pacing on the bridge, very much alive but clearly imprisoned. "Touching," came Nexus Prime's voice from the shadows. "The dragons have come to honor their debt." How wonderfully predictable. The Void Collective leader materialized before them, flanked by a dozen shadow guards. "You have saved me the trouble of hunting you down, Drogon of the Royal Guard. Now, surrender the heart, and I will release both the boy and his grandfather." "Never," Drogon snarled, positioning himself protectively in front of Theo. "Then you have chosen their deaths," Nexus Prime said coldly. He gestured, and the energy web around the stellar wanderer began to contract. Through the ship's hull, they could see the metal beginning to buckle under the pressure. "Wait." Theo stepped forward, an idea forming in his mind. "You said the heart maintains balance, right? Between matter and void?" Lysandra looked at him sharply. "Theo, what are you thinking? What happens if that balance is suddenly disrupted? What if the heart releases all its stored energy at once?" Drogon's eyes widened as he understood. "It would create a cascade reaction, like a star going supernova, but focused purely on life energy." "Precisely what would happen if we were to overload it," Lysandra added, her voice filled with sudden hope. Nexus Prime's void face contorted with what might have been alarm. You wouldn't dare. The explosion would destroy this entire sector. Not if we contained it properly, Drogon said, his tactical mind working through the possibilities. Dragon fire, focused through the heart's matrix, could create a controlled burst, one that would only affect beings of pure void energy. Theo grinned, feeling more confident than he had since this whole adventure began. In other words, it would be like turning on a really bright light in a room full of shadows. Lysandra reached into a hidden compartment in her armor and withdrew a crystal that pulsed with warm, golden light, the heart of Draconius. Even in its dormant state, Theo could feel the life energy radiating from it. This is your last warning, Nexus Prime hissed, raising his hands as dark energy began to swirl around him. Surrender the heart, or face the consequences. Here's our answer, Drogon roared, and unleashed a torrent of dragon fire directly at the heart in Lysandra's hands. The crystal blazed with brilliant light as it absorbed and amplified the flame. The heart rose into the air, spinning faster and faster as golden energy poured from it in waves. The shadow guards began to shriek and dissolve as the life energy washed over them. Nexus Prime threw up a barrier of dark energy, but even he was being pushed back by the heart's radiance. This isn't over, he screamed as his form began to waver. The Void Collective will remember this. Let them remember this, Theo called out boldly. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can light up the darkest corner of the universe. The light from the heart reached its crescendo, and suddenly every piece of void technology on the ship began to shut down. The energy web around the stellar wanderer dissolved, freeing Theo's grandfather. Emergency power flickered and died throughout the vessel. As the heart's light faded to a gentle glow, Nexus Prime and his remaining forces had vanished completely, not destroyed, but banished back to whatever dark corner of space they had come from. Drogon caught the heart as it settled gently into his claws, its surface now pulsing with a warm, steady rhythm. The balance is restored, he said with satisfaction. Theo ran to the stellar wanderer as his grandfather emerged from the ship, looking a bit shaken but otherwise unharmed. Grandpa. Theo threw himself into Orion's arms. Easy there, kiddo, Orion chuckled, though his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I knew you'd figure something out. You always were too clever for your own good. As they prepared to leave the now powerless Void Collective ship, Lysandra approached Theo one final time. The life debt is fulfilled, she said formally, but the friendship remains. Whenever you need us, Theo of Earth, the dragons of Draconius will answer your call. Zix bounced up to him excitedly. And next time you're in the asteroid belt, we'll buy you dinner. Theo laughed, realizing that this incredible adventure had started with one simple truth his grandfather had taught him: kindness truly was the universal language. And sometimes, it was also the most powerful force in the galaxy. The universal language, finale. 3 days later, Theo sat in the familiar warmth of the neon-lit diner on asteroid X9, sharing a meal with his grandfather and the dragon family. The other patrons, aliens of every conceivable shape and size, had initially been startled by the presence of dragons, but word of their heroic rescue had spread quickly through the space station. Now, beings stopped by their table regularly to offer thanks and share their own stories of kindness across the stars. I still can't believe you faced down the Void Collective, Zara the waitress said as she refilled Theo's cocoa. A 10-year-old human boy standing up to one of the galaxy's most feared forces. Theo blushed and shrugged. I wasn't alone. My friends helped. Drogon chuckled, a sound like distant thunder. Modesty is a rare virtue among heroes, young Theo. You should be proud of what you accomplished. What I don't understand, Captain Orion said, leaning back in his chair, is how the Void Collective knew to target you in the first place. They had to have been watching the diner. Lysandra's expression grew thoughtful. The Void Collective has agents throughout the galaxy, beings who have traded their light for power. They were likely monitoring us, waiting for the right moment to strike. When Theo created the life debt, it forced them to accelerate their plans. But it also gave us the weapon we needed to defeat them, Drogon added, patting the small carrying case where the heart of Draconius now rested safely. Your act of kindness didn't just save us from hunger, Theo, it saved the entire sector from falling into darkness. Little Zix, who had been unusually quiet during the conversation, suddenly perked up. Theo. I almost forgot. He reached into his small pack and pulled out a scale that shimmered with the same golden light as the heart. This is for you, a dragon scale blessed by the heart of Draconius. As long as you carry it, you'll always be able to call us if you need help. Theo accepted the scale with reverence, feeling the warm tingle of life energy against his palm. Thank you, Zix. All of you. This has been the most incredible adventure of my life. Adventure? Orion laughed. Son, you single-handedly prevented an intergalactic war, rescued your old grandfather from alien kidnappers, and helped banish an ancient evil from our galaxy. I'd say that goes a bit beyond adventure. As they prepared to leave the diner, other patrons began to approach their table. A crystalline being from the Sapphire Nebula offered Theo a small gem that would help him breathe in any atmosphere. A family of gaseous entities from the Horsehead Nebula gave him a vial of their essence that would allow him to communicate with any species, no matter how alien. Even the gruff tentacled bartender shuffled over to shake Theo's hand with one of his many appendages. It seems you've inspired more than just dragons, Lysandra observed quietly. Look around, Theo. Do you see what your kindness has created? Theo looked around the diner and saw something wonderful. Beings who had never spoken to each other before were now sharing tables and stories. The crystalline entity was teaching Zix how to refract light through his scales to create rainbow patterns. The gaseous family was showing other patrons how their swirling dance could predict weather patterns across star systems. Even Zara had pulled up a chair and was laughing with customers instead of just serving them. One act of kindness, Theo murmured, understanding flooding through him. It really did ripple across the universe. Like a stone thrown into still water, Orion agreed, placing a proud hand on his grandson's shoulder. Each ripple touches something new, and those ripples create more ripples, until the whole pond is dancing with light. As they made their way back to the Stellar Wanderer, now fully repaired thanks to the grateful asteroid miners, Theo found himself thinking about home. Earth seemed so far away now, not just in distance but in understanding. How could he explain to his parents that their 10-year-old son had helped save the galaxy simply by buying dinner for some strangers? Penny for your thoughts, kiddo. Orion asked as they boarded their ship. I was just thinking about Mom and Dad, Theo said. They're never going to believe any of this. Drogon's deep voice rumbled with amusement. Perhaps they don't need to know all the details. Sometimes the most important lessons are the simple ones, that kindness matters, that helping others is always the right choice, and that even the smallest person can make the biggest difference. Besides, Zix added with a mischievous glint in his eyes, you've got souvenirs. Theo laughed, patting the various gifts in his pockets, the dragon scale, the breathing crystal, the communication essence, and a dozen other tokens of friendship from beings across the galaxy. Each one represented a new friend, a new connection forged through the simple act of caring about others. As the Stellar Wanderer prepared to depart, the dragon family took flight alongside them for the first part of their journey. Through the ship's viewports, Theo watched as they soared through space with impossible grace, their scales catching and reflecting the light of distant stars. Where will they go now? Theo asked. They'll find a new home, Orion replied confidently. Dragons are survivors, and with the heart of Draconius to guide them, they'll locate a world where they can rebuild their civilization. Maybe they'll even find a way to heal their frozen homeworld someday. Through the comm system, Lysandra's melodious voice reached them. Theo of Earth, we must part ways here. Our paths lead to the outer rim, while yours leads home. But remember, friendship knows no distance in the vastness of space. Thank you, Theo replied, his voice thick with emotion. For everything. For showing me that being different doesn't mean we can't be friends. For teaching me about honor and courage. And for proving that kindness really is the most powerful force in the universe. No, young friend, Drogon's voice rumbled warmly. Thank you for reminding us that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the simplest gestures. Safe travels, Theo Wells. May your journey be filled with wonder, and may your kindness continue to light the way for others. The dragons performed one final aerial dance around the stellar wanderer before shooting off toward the galactic rim, their forms eventually disappearing among the stars. But Theo could still feel their friendship warming his heart, just as he could feel the gentle pulse of the dragon's scale in his pocket. As they settled in for the long journey back to Earth, Theo curled up in the co-pilot's seat next to his grandfather. The stars streamed past the viewports in ribbons of light, each one representing countless worlds, countless beings, countless opportunities for kindness and connection. Grandpa? Theo said sleepily. Do you think we'll have more adventures? Orion smiled, his weathered hands steady on the ship's controls. Son, something tells me that as long as you keep that generous heart of yours, adventure will find you wherever you go. The universe has a way of rewarding those who choose kindness over fear. Theo nodded, his eyelids growing heavy. As he drifted off to sleep, he dreamed of crystal cities and dragon flights, of alien friends and cosmic adventures still to come. But most of all, he dreamed of the simple truth that had started it all, that in a universe vast and strange and sometimes frightening, the smallest act of kindness could indeed change everything. The stellar wanderer continued its journey through the star-filled void, carrying home a young boy who had learned that heroism wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the bravest. Sometimes, it was simply about being kind. And in diners and spaceports, on space stations and planetary surfaces across the galaxy, beings of every shape and species continued to share the story of the human boy who gave his birthday money to a family of dragons, and in doing so, lit a spark of hope that would burn brightly throughout the cosmos for generations to come. The universe, after all, had a long memory for acts of kindness. The end.